"Get out, you poor high school dropout. You're totally out of place here." In an exclusive, members-only luxury inn, this utterly misplaced shout echoed through the halls. The voice belonged to a beautiful but ill-tempered woman, a former classmate who had been disliked since middle school. She had shown up uninvited and immediately started hurling insults at me as soon as she spotted me. Even when one of the organizers tried to intervene, she complained, saying it was a complete failure on their part to forget to invite her, souring the mood of the gathering. Apparently, she found out about this place through the social media posts of our classmates, despite not having received an invitation herself. She was obsessively checking the social media of just another former classmate, with whom she wasn't particularly close. Several classmates who posted the information looked remorseful. They never imagined that a classmate they didn't even follow and weren't close with would go out of their way to check their posts. Moreover, none of the classmates who posted had specified which reunion it was for. Was it for the elementary school reunion? Or the middle school reunion? Or perhaps the high school reunion? Yet, she tracked down the classmates who posted and determined that all of them were from our middle school days. She boasted about it, but the other classmates present were quite taken aback. Her level of obsession was honestly frightening. The reason Emily wasn't invited to the reunion is simply because she's disliked. However, she seems to still believe that she's popular, just like in middle school, and complained to the organizer that the reunion couldn't start without her, the star of the class. When the organizer apologized for not inviting her, she snorted in triumph. Then, noticing I was still there, she started to harass me again. Her loud and bothersome yelling was extremely annoying. The commotion was a nuisance to the inn and was obviously making the other classmates uncomfortable. I asked if I should really leave. She said that it was indeed a nuisance that I was there, so I decided to leave. The classmates tried to stop me, but I told them not to worry about me and opened the door to leave. As I left, I heard her say loudly, as if for me to hear, that she was relieved. Little did she know what a terrible experience awaited her the next morning. I'm Jack, 34 years old. In a few months, I'll turn 35. I live with my grandmother and parents, a family of 4. The place I was just ousted from was a private section of a high-end, traditional inn, accessible only by referral. This inn was rented out for our reunion, which was essentially a gathering of middle school classmates. We've always called any such gatherings, whether they were class or age group reunions, simply reunions. And the person who treated me like a pauper and drove me out of the reunion venue was my middle school classmate, Emily. Ever since middle school, Emily had always flaunted her status as a president's daughter, lording it over everyone, and was disliked by her classmates. The company her father owned wasn't large enough to warrant such behavior, which all of us classmates knew. Sure, she was technically a president's daughter, but that didn't justify looking down on others. Emily always acted superior to everyone, but she especially looked down on me, calling me poor. Probably because I wasn't the type to show my emotions much, which Emily didn't find amusing. Even when Emily hurled insults at me, I just ignored them and didn't respond or break down crying like some other classmates. I was frustrated, but I didn't show it. I felt it was pointless to talk back. I think I have an idea why Emily assumed I was poor. It was probably because I was living with my mother at the time, so she might have thought we were a single-parent family. In Emily's mind, a single-parent family equaled poverty, and that's why she believed I was poor. It seemed pointless to argue with someone like Emily, who held such prejudiced beliefs. While I was living just with my mother at that time, we weren't a single-parent family. It might seem like a single-parent situation since my father wasn't living with us, but we were financially supported by him. My father, a Japanese American, is an international lawyer with legal qualifications in both Japan and California. He worked at a large law firm with offices around the world, specifically in their California office. However, when I was in the 4th grade of elementary school, he was transferred to Japan. At that time, my mother and I considered moving to Japan with him, but there was a reason we didn't. My mother's parents. In other words, my grandparents hadn't accepted my father even after 10 years of marriage. To convince them, my mother and I decided to stay in California. My grandparents, while not accepting my father, were always affectionate towards me. It seems my mother didn't want to take away the loving grandparents I had. So, my mother and I stayed in California, but my father would visit us for a long vacation once or twice a year. The opposition from my grandparents was apparently because my mother married immediately after graduating from university. Although my father was 6 years older than her and had more life experience, my mother had just started her career. To my grandparents, it might have seemed like my father had charmed their daughter. But, as I heard from my father, it was more my mother who had passionately pursued him. Also, my grandparents couldn't quite accept that he is not purely American, even though he was fluent in English and of American descent. They could understand it in their minds but hadn't reconciled it emotionally. Thus, my mother and I regularly visited my grandparents and helped with the family business while trying to persuade them. While helping with their business, I began to think that I wanted to do the same kind of work as my grandparents someday. I expressed this desire during the summer of my 3rd year in middle school. "Can I take over here someday?" My words surprised my grandparents and my mother. I admired my father and had said in my younger years that I wanted to be a lawyer like him, so their surprise was understandable. It's normal for childhood dreams to change, but my mother and grandparents probably thought I still aspired to be a lawyer. This revelation changed everything. Apparently, my grandparents had been worried about not having an heir since my mother married my father, and I was planning to become a lawyer. My mother had not definitively said she wouldn't take over, and if she had, my father would have quit his job as a lawyer to work with her. It was clear to me, even as his son, how much my father adored my mother. His expressions of love were so abundant that even I felt embarrassed watching them. Of course, he also showered me with plenty of love. Maybe my reluctance to express my emotions was due to my father's overly straightforward expressions of affection. When I expressed interest in taking over my grandparents' business, my father started talking about quitting his job and moving back to America in the future. I thought it was a waste since he had achieved his dream of becoming a lawyer. But he didn't want to live apart from me and my mother. As my mother and I worried about this, my grandfather said, "Jack can take over when he's an adult," and suggested that I live with my father in Japan. My grandmother also supported this, saying it was strange for the family to live apart for so long. Effectively, they had accepted my father. So, it was decided that I would move to Japan as soon as I graduated from middle school. After that, it was a whirlwind of activity. From obtaining a visa to preparing for the move and selecting schools, and so on. There was so much to do. Eventually, I went to high school and college in Japan and returned to America at 22 to start preparing to take over my grandparents' business. When it was decided that I would return to America, my father said he would quit his job and come back with me, but my mother wanted to stay in Japan and persuaded him to stay. My mother probably didn't seriously want to stay in Japan, but she might have insisted on it to prevent my father from quitting his dream job. Thus, I began living with my grandparents to prepare for taking over the family business. Usually gentle, my grandparents were strict when it came to work. If I slacked off even a little, they would scold me mercilessly. Some time passed under their strict guidance as a successor, when suddenly my grandfather fell sick. He was already 74 years old. Despite still working, His body must have reached its limits. My grandmother, being 71 years old, decided to retire as well. Employees who had been with my grandparents longer than I and had helped out since their childhood recognized me as the successor and agreed that I should take over. There were still some uncertainties, but I decided to move forward with guidance from my grandparents. While preserving the aspects my grandparents cherished, I also planned to incorporate the ideas of the younger employees. 5 years have passed since I took over, and it was time to start new initiatives. Thanks to these, I was leading a very busy life. Occasionally, my parents would visit from Japan and help out. Now, my grandparents and my father have a good relationship. My grandparents now exchange hugs with him as a matter of course. A year into the planning for these new initiatives, just as we were about to start implementing them, I received a call from Michael, a close friend and middle school classmate. Knowing I was busy, Michael's call must have been about something significant. When I arrived at the meeting place, I was surprised to find not only Michael, but also our former classmate, Sarah. I had assumed Michael would be alone, but after hearing their story, I understood why they came together. "We've decided to get married," they announced. Michael and Sarah were my classmates in middle school. However, they hadn't been dating since then. As far as I remembered, they went to different high schools and universities. It turned out that Michael, having overworked himself and fallen ill, was hospitalized, where Sarah, inspired by her beloved grandmother's illness to become a nurse, was working. Everyone knew Sarah had aspired to be a nurse since middle school, following her grandmother's passing. I remembered Sarah had gone to a high school with a nursing program. Many boys, attracted to her calm and kind nature, had admired her. Michael had become a lawyer. Michael and I had been childhood friends. Our houses were close to each other, so I also knew about his father, who is a lawyer. When I was dreaming of becoming a lawyer like my father, Michael too expressed the same aspiration. Though I chose a different path, Michael had realized his dream of becoming a lawyer. His strong sense of justice made him a natural fit for the role, often being the peacemaker in our class. Their marriage news was significant. Sarah, the class's Madonna, and Michael, known for his strong sense of justice. I was curious about the reaction of our classmates. They planned to announce their marriage in the class group chat, but Michael wanted to tell me face to face. I was touched by Michael's sentiment, feeling a mix of happiness and embarrassment. Despite receiving overt expressions of love from my family, it felt different coming from a close friend. Wanting to reciprocate Michael's feelings, I suggested, "Why don't we organize a reunion?" The marriage of Michael and Sarah, who were central figures in our class, was quite a significant event. Part of me wanted to see how our classmates would react, but I also felt that announcing their marriage in a group chat seemed somewhat lackluster. However, Michael and Sarah looked conflicted at my suggestion. I remembered that the invitation for the 15-year reunion, held every 5 years, hadn't reached me 5 years ago. As I asked what happened, Michael and Sarah exchanged glances before explaining. My moving to Japan after middle school graduation was only known to close classmates. Of course, Emily wouldn't know. Apparently, Emily made wild assumptions when she found out someone else was living in my old house and there was no sign of me attending a nearby high school. She had been spreading false rumors among our classmates, claiming that I had run away in the night due to poverty or that I was working at a construction site because I couldn't afford high school. Of course, my friends who knew I had moved to Japan corrected Emily's fabrications, and now, nobody believes her lies. However, due to these lies, Emily became even more disliked and ended up being excluded from a group chat created without her. Currently, the group chat with Emily in it is hardly functioning. Despite the fact that Emily was a classmate, the truth is that for both the 5th and 10th year reunions, She was sent invitations but never responded. However, she showed up unannounced on the day of both reunions, saying nonsensically, "It's dull without me, right?" and didn't even pay a participation fee. This led to discussions about discontinuing the reunions if it meant having to invite Emily. I couldn't attend the 5th-year reunion because I was in Japan, and I missed the 10th-year one as I was too busy learning the ropes at work. Since then, only close friends have been gathering, almost like small reunions. Michael and Sarah were worried about hosting a reunion, concerned that Emily's attendance would spoil the atmosphere. While I could easily ignore Emily's provocations, the thought of her ruining the reunion's mood was something even I wanted to avoid. So, I suggested this. I suggested that we should ask everyone in the class group chat created without Emily. I had anticipated that the consensus would be not to invite her, given the existence of an Emily-free chat group, but I never expected the opinion in favor of inviting her to be 0. I was surprised that not even one person, not even Michael or Sarah, thought it might be better to invite her despite disliking her. There was even a significant number of voices saying they wouldn't attend if Emily was there. Apparently, Emily had been looking down on and verbally abusing her classmates in high school and college too. The chat was soon filled with complaints from classmates who had been her victims. To change the topic, Michael posted a comment, volunteering himself and Sarah as organizers. Thanks to that, the conversation shifted from bad-mouthing Emily to planning the reunion. Typical of justice-driven Michael. After all, watching a chat filled with insults isn't exactly pleasant. On the day of the reunion, one by one, former classmates began to gather at the venue. This time, the reunion was held in a rented private section of an exclusive, members-only luxury inn, where entry is not possible without an invitation. Seeing everyone impressed with the venue filled me with joy. As the start time approached, Michael and Sarah took the microphone for the opening address. But then, with a flushed face, Michael announced, "We're getting married." The room went silent for a moment. But soon, congratulations started flying from all around, and the venue was enveloped in a festive atmosphere. Michael and Sarah were quickly surrounded by a crowd, bombarded with questions. Watching them shyly answer, I was moved to tears. Though I'm not good at showing emotions, tears of happiness seem to flow naturally. Maybe with age, I've become more like my father, who is generous with his emotions. I imagine my father would be openly weeping and expressing his joy at such a moment, which brought a smile to my face. Thinking back to our middle school days brought a wave of nostalgia. Despite Emily, our class was famously close-knit. Some of us were even asked by seniors in our club activities how we managed to become so close. Additionally, there were those who were told by friends from other classes that our closeness was almost weirdly strong. Our homeroom teacher had once expressed concern that our close relationships might distract us from studying for exams. Even after 20 years, it seems our bond hasn't changed. The venue, initially buzzing with Michael and Sarah's surprise marriage announcement, settled down as everyone began to share their recent updates. Suddenly, there was a commotion near the corridor connecting the main building to the annex. I could see an employee trying to stop someone. Not just me, standing near the entrance, but most of the attendees started to notice as the voices grew louder. Then, from the entrance where all eyes were now focused, Emily made her appearance. As all eyes turned towards the entrance, Emily appeared, bursting through the sliding doors and yelling, "How dare you not invite me?" Her misplaced shouts echoed through the exclusive, members-only luxury inn. Despite being over 30, Emily still being selfish, which made me sigh in disbelief. Noticing me near the entrance, she turned and shouted, "The high school dropout and poor person should just leave. You're out of place here." Emily had always been beautiful, but now her unpleasant personality was evident on her face. I know I shouldn't judge people by their appearances, but having been bothered by her since the old days, Please forgive me for thinking this way. Uninvited, yet here she was, hurling abuse. I told her, this isn't a reunion, it's an open house. This gathering was officially an open house. That's why the sign at the inn's entrance also said open house. After deciding not to invite her in the group chat, I proposed this idea to Michael and Sarah, who were concerned about not inviting one person due to their strong sense of justice and kindness. A grand open house for the newly built annex, with old friends happening to be the invitees. This provided a pretext that it was just a coincidence that the invitees were old friends. Hearing my suggestion, Michael and Sarah, who probably didn't want to deal with her anyway, quickly agreed. Startled at first, Emily then began to rant, realizing that the gathered attendees were all classmates, making it obvious that this was a reunion. As the commotion grew, Sarah stepped forward and Emily accused her. "You're disqualified as an organizer for forgetting to invite me." Emily began berating Sarah, proudly explaining how she discovered this reunion. It seems she had scoured the social media of former classmates with whom she had no interaction to get this information. Classmates who had posted about the reunion looked apologetic, probably never imagining Emily would go to such lengths to check their accounts. The classmates who had posted about the reunion had all refrained from specifying which one it was. Was it the elementary school reunion? Or the middle school one? Maybe the high school reunion? Nevertheless, Emily meticulously searched through her former classmates' posts, determining that they were all from her middle school days. Her obsession to go to such lengths was truly frightening. I wasn't the only one who felt this way. Murmurs of fear were audible among the attendees. She then claimed her job as an influencer made her adept at gathering information. However, her SNS followers, barely reaching 100, were a known fact in the earlier group chat. She was, in essence, a self-proclaimed influencer. Unaware of her unpopularity, she insisted, "The party doesn't start without popular me," and confronted Sarah. As Sarah apologized, Emily smirked triumphantly. Noticing me, she began to hassle me again. Her loud ranting was nothing short of a nuisance. With the potential disturbance to the inn and the discomfort of the classmates, I had had enough. "If you're going to say that, should I just leave?" I asked her. She insisted it was more of a nuisance having me around. "All right then, I'll leave the rest to you." As I announced my intention to leave the venue, my classmates tried to stop me. Observing this, Emily burst out laughing and said, "Isn't it ridiculous to hold back a dropout to a guy like him?" I assured my classmates, asking them to enjoy themselves, and stepped outside. Emily's voice, claiming relief at my departure, followed me out. Knowing the trouble she would face the next day, I couldn't help but find it ironic. The next morning, Emily's loud voice echoed in the inn's lobby. After each attendee had settled their bills, Emily, who was the last to pay, saw the bill and exclaimed in shock, "What's with this amount?" Confronted with a bill of $25,000, she was in shock. Being just a self-claimed influencer, it was a sum she couldn't afford. Accusing the inn of extortion and fraud, Sarah approached her. "You promised to take responsibility yesterday, didn't you? I learned about what happened after I left from Michael last night, after the reunion ended." Even after I had gone, Emily continued making belittling comments about our classmates. Once she found out Michael was a lawyer, she suddenly started acting overly familiar with him. Emily claims to be an unemployed influencer. Michael subtly indicated his preference for people who are self-reliant, but Emily seemed to think he was talking about her and got carried away by herself. Thinking she wouldn't understand unless he spelled it out, Michael was about to speak up when Sarah declared that he was her fiancé. However, Emily insulted Sarah, calling her plain and unattractive, and then, despite having been all over Michael just moments before, she suddenly claimed she had no interest in him. Even I, who heard about it later, was speechless. Whether it was pride or something else, I couldn't understand how someone could be so brazen after aggressively flirting with someone and then dismiss them. I'm sure the classmates who remained at the scene were just as shocked, their mouths agape. After a while, due to Emily's behavior, the reunion had to be wrapped up. Emily was still insisting it was too early to end, but no one agreed with her. Seeing Emily persistently trying to convince the guys to keep drinking, Michael finally resigned and informed the staff that it was over. Sarah, somewhat reluctantly, told Emily, who was about to leave the venue, "You'll have to take responsibility for driving Jack away." She said it with a smile. Michael, telling me this, looked a bit scared, as if foreseeing a future where he'd be completely under Sarah's thumb. I couldn't help but laugh a bit. Confused by Sarah's remark, Emily started causing a scene, demanding the manager at the front desk take responsibility. When I showed up, knowing this would happen, Emily looked visibly disgusted and said, "Still here, you poor thing. Just disappear." So when I said, "Didn't you call me here?" she was dumbfounded. In reality, I inherited this traditional inn from my grandparents and am currently running it. The annex used for the reunion was built as part of a new initiative planned since last year. In this era, just being a traditional inn isn't enough to attract customers. Hence, we plan to make the annex, which is available even to walk-ins. We're considering renting it out for weddings and corporate retreats in the future. I had planned for the reunion participants to fill out surveys as monitors, so I could consider future plans based on their feedback. I wanted to provide an appropriate venue for Michael's marriage announcement, being a close friend. However, I knew Michael would have hesitated if he knew the real reason. That's why I invited everyone under the guise of a viewing party. Emily, who refused to believe a poor dropout could run a luxury inn, was adamant even after I explained everything. So Michael chimed in, "It might be odd for me to speak about someone else's family, but I think Jack's family is probably richer than Emily's." He explained that this was my mother's family's inn and my father was an international lawyer. Emily stopped calling me poor, but she made excuses, saying she didn't agree to any payment. However, I had clearly explained to her last night that it was a viewing party. She was the one who assumed it was a reunion just because her classmates were there. Still, Emily insisted the amount was exorbitant. I had no choice but to meticulously explain the breakdown of the amount. The viewing party participants, as monitors, had a fee of $200. There was a condition that participants had to fill out a survey. Part of the purpose was for me, the proprietor, to observe the participants' genuine reactions. But since I was driven out by Emily, I couldn't see their reactions. So I decided to charge Emily the difference for 25 participants. Since the annex's room rates weren't decided yet, I used the main building's rate of $1,200 per person, minus the $200 fee, totaling $1,000 per person for 25 people. Emily, who claimed she couldn't pay such an amount, was getting what she deserved. Michael told her she was lucky not to be charged for the damages she caused to the viewing party. There was a condition that participants had to fill out a survey. However, Emily proposed an amount of just $100 per month for the installment plan. That's an unreasonable amount. It was a ridiculous proposal, taking years to pay off $25,000. At that moment, someone I had called arrived. Seeing this person, Emily's face turned pale and she froze. I had called Emily's father first thing in the morning, anticipating her inability to pay. Emily's father runs a towel rental company. He had frequently visited this inn for business, so I knew his contact information. We handle our laundry and sanitation in-house and had no intention of using a rental service, so I had declined his offers. Thinking he was being offered a contract, Emily's father came eagerly but was made to apologize with his daughter after I explained the situation. He asked for forgiveness with only the apology, citing his business's poor financial condition. Like father, like daughter, I thought, almost admiringly, in a way. Forgiving them now would just lead to more of Emily's rampages. Even in such a situation, she had the nerve to say, "I'll marry you," showing no signs of remorse. When I mentioned calling our legal advisor, Emily burst into tears. Upon seeing this, Michael advised Emily's father, who was sitting there in shock, to quickly take the crying Emily out of the front area to avoid any disturbance to the inn's operation. Then, Emily's father hastily grabbed her arm and led her outside. Emily's father's towel rental company wasn't well regarded in the hotel industry. It was notorious for delivering towels with mold or unremoved stains. Because of such sloppy service, I heard that the company was losing contracts rapidly. I also heard that Emily's father tried to make absurd requests like asking for contracts in exchange for marrying off his beautiful daughter. Emily, silent, was indeed beautiful. There were rumors about someone who, charmed by her photos, agreed to a blind date, only to be completely turned off by her personality. Emily, learning that her father's company was facing bankruptcy, must have forced her way into the reunion, seeking a new source to leech off. Unfortunately for her, none of her classmates, who knew her personality, were interested in dating her. Afterwards, Michael handled the task of informing Emily and her father's company about the financial responsibilities for this incident. Michael has been serving as a legal advisor for the inn for the past 2 years. 2 years ago, my parents returned to America. At that time, Michael, who had always admired my father, decided to leave his office job and study under my father's guidance. My father, intending to retire upon returning to America, was persuaded by Michael's passion and decided to open his own law firm. While my father is the representative, Michael handles most of the operations. It's decided that Michael will take over the firm, with my father supporting him until he's ready to lead on his own. Nowadays, my father spends most of his time at the inn, so it won't be long before Michael becomes the head. As for Emily's payment, which she couldn't afford, my parents ended up covering it. However, the commotion she caused at the inn's front desk became known, leading to the bankruptcy of her father's company. Fed up with her husband's doting on their willful daughter, Emily's mother left the family. Emily and her father moved to a small apartment where they are living by working multiple jobs. As for me, I continue to work hard at the inn. My grandfather passed away last year, but I live happily with my parents and grandmother. The opening of the new annex, which I've been planning since last year, is finally set. The first guests will be Michael and Sarah. Michael and Sarah decided to use the annex wedding plan at our inn. We agreed to offer it at a discounted rate in exchange for using their wedding for future advertising. Even without the advertising deal, I would have been happy to provide it at a discount, but knowing Michael and Sarah, they would insist on paying the regular rate. Since Michael knows the regular rates as our legal advisor, I couldn't deceive him. So, we agreed on the modeling for us. Watching their happy moments makes me want to get married too, but I don't have anyone in mind. What about Emily? No way. That's one thing that's absolutely out of the question. Don't come to the wedding, Dad. Please, I'm begging you. If you come, I'll cut ties with you as a father. Rejected from attending my daughter Emily's wedding, I felt deeply hurt. Emily's harsh words keep echoing in my head. I've been betrayed by my family again. My name is Jack, 44 years old. My wife's name was Jennifer. She would have been 42 if she were still alive. It's not that she died or anything. She went missing 10 years ago, so I just say if she were alive when I mention her. Jennifer and I had one daughter, Emily, now 20 years old. After graduating from high school, she moved out to live on her own. Jennifer disappeared when Emily was in 4th grade. She left without leaving a single note. I thought she might have gotten involved in some incident and reported her missing to the police, but there's been no word at all. At first, Emily was deeply saddened by her mother's absence, but one day, she seemed to have come to terms with it. "Dad, even without Mom, let's do our best together," she said. Her brave words made me, a father, burst into tears. I only told my parents in the countryside that Jennifer was gone. My father was silent, and my mother was exasperated, saying, "See, I told you so." There was a reason why my parents were so cold to me in my despair. My hometown is in rural Nebraska. We're farmers there, known locally as a wealthy family. I met Jennifer while attending a university in New York and fell deeply in love with her, dropping out to marry her. Luckily, I got a job in New York, and once things looked stable for Jennifer and me, we went to my hometown to formally register our marriage. When my father saw Jennifer, he didn't say a word and went back inside, while my mother looked at us with an indescribable expression. "Dad, that's rude to Jennifer." "Mom, you think so too, right?" When Jennifer wasn't around, and I was alone with Mom, I mentioned about Jennifer, but she opposed the marriage. "Jack, don't marry that girl. She's not the right one for you. Jennifer will betray you. You'll just get hurt." Angry at their groundless accusations, I returned to New York with Jennifer and registered our marriage. It was almost like eloping. When we visited my parents, Jennifer was already pregnant with Emily, making it a shotgun wedding. In hindsight, my parents couldn't have been happy about me dropping out of university and having a shotgun wedding with a woman they didn't know. But Jennifer and I, driven by youth, were happy. Emily was born safely, and even though we were poor, we lived modestly as a family of 3. With my salary alone insufficient, Jennifer also started working part-time. Initially, she worked day shifts, but then she started working as a hostess in a bar for better pay. Already beautiful, Jennifer became even more glamorous and appealing to men after becoming a night worker. I resented this change but blamed my poor earnings and worked hard at my job. Emily, growing up and attending kindergarten and then elementary school, seemed to realize our family was different. Still, I desperately wanted to protect our 3-person family. Feeling betrayed by my parents who opposed our marriage, I couldn't let go of that resentment. Then, Jennifer disappeared. After she was gone, I did everything to raise Emily on my own. I couldn't leave young Emily alone, so I avoided overtime and working on holidays as much as possible. The company sympathized with me, but they weren't a charity. Unable to comply with the company's demands, they eventually suggested I resign voluntarily. As a 34-year-old single father, I couldn't afford to leave my job. Who would hire a middle-aged man with a child? Despite my resistance, I was laid off under the guise of downsizing. This feels just like a movie I saw on TV a long time ago. Sitting in the park during the day, opening a can of beer, I grumbled to myself. The movie, starring Dustin Hoffman, was about a man whose wife left him, raising their child alone, and then losing his job. The ending, if I remember correctly, was it that the wife who ran away remarried, taking the son away from the protagonist? Shaking off these unpleasant thoughts, I started looking for a job again. Despite being laid off, as the saying goes, when one door closes, another opens, and I found a new job 2 months later. It was a smaller company with a lower salary. But it was better than being unemployed, so I endured, working every day even though I was often yelled at by my younger colleagues. Back when Jennifer was around, she made good money as a hostess, allowing Emily to live quite lavishly, but after she started living with me, we had to live frugally. Becoming poor and being teased about it at school, Emily began to rebel against me. "Dad, Why are we so poor? It's embarrassing. I don't even want to go to school. I comforted and persuaded Emily, who was in tears, to go to school somehow. But one day, after seeing how tired I was from work and yet still trying hard, Emily stopped rebelling against me. Let's do our best, even without Mom. Her bright attitude was a saving grace for me. The neighbors, perhaps feeling sympathetic towards a father and daughter living alone, took care of us in various ways. Whether it was dinner or clothes for Emily, some people were kind enough to help. One of them was a woman named Ashley, who lived in the same apartment. She was the same age as me, 34, single, and worked at a government office. By a strange twist of fate, her father was from Nebraska, just like me, and he was a senior in middle school to my father. It's really strange, such a coincidence in this big city of New York. Ashley said, and took care of Emily without asking for anything in return. It's embarrassing to say, but Emily is a girl. Naturally, there are things about girls' underwear that a man wouldn't understand. When I confided this to Ashley, she laughed and said, "It's okay, it must be hard for a man," and kindly gave advice. What surprised me the most was when Ashley mentioned that they went shopping for Emily's bra. I was so surprised I asked Ashley, "Has Emily grown up that much?" And she casually replied, "Yes." The growth of a girl is fast, Jack. You might become a grandfather before you know it. Ashley laughed as she said this, and I jokingly replied, "Please, don't scare me like that." I truly believed Emily was growing up bright and honest. But there was one time when Emily really shocked me. It was when she was in middle school. We were barely making ends meet, and I was struggling to gather enough money for Emily's school trip, considering pawning the wedding ring I had with Jennifer. When I was deep in thought, Emily came up and asked me what was wrong. Not wanting to burden Emily with unnecessary worries, I simply told her that I was considering pawning our wedding ring. I thought she would object, but her response was unexpected. "Why not pawn it?" Shocked, I explained it was a memento of her mother and me, and Emily picked up the ring and asked, "What is this, Dad?" I said it was a ring filled with memories of her mother, and Emily replied, "No, it's just an object. Objects can all be turned into money." Her harsh view left me speechless, and realizing my reaction, she smiled and said, "You're right. It's a ring filled with memories of Mom, so we should treasure it." Emily's smile reminded me of Jennifer's. When Emily started high school, she expressed a desire to get a part-time job. Apparently, she wanted to help with our household finances. As her father, I wanted Emily to focus on her studies and extracurricular activities. I never imagined asking my daughter, in the prime of her youth, to help support our family financially. Yet Emily insisted on getting a part-time job. When I asked if there was something she wanted to buy, she bravely answered that there wasn't anything in particular. She just wanted to help with the household expenses. I allowed Emily to take a part-time job on the condition that she continued to excel in her studies. "Thank you, Dad," she said, hugging me. It had been years since she had done that, and I felt a bit of unease. True to her promise, Emily was an honor student at school, and she worked part-time whenever she had free time. It seems she was working as a waitress at a family restaurant. As a high schooler, Emily, who resembled her mother Jennifer, began to exude an adult allure. She learned to apply makeup and slowly started dressing more flamboyantly, which led me to express my concerns. I was worried because it reminded me of how Jennifer gradually transformed into a nighttime entertainer. Emily listened to me and stopped wearing heavy makeup and flashy fashion, which relieved me, but I still had some doubts. It was because of the perfume she wore. The same scent Jennifer used to wear. I wondered if she was changing her clothes and doing her makeup outside the house. Even if she changed before coming home, the perfume scent would linger. I felt betrayed by my own family. There should be no lies within a family. Family members must trust each other. Thus, I dismissed my suspicions about Emily. The time I spent with Emily gradually decreased. Emily spent her holidays immersed in part-time work. I felt a touch of loneliness as she was even away from home during Christmas and New Year's. When I confided this to Ashley, she comforted me, saying, "She's a girl, she has her social life, but Emily is a good girl." Being a father can be lonely. I thought all I could do for my only family, Emily, was to leave her as much money as possible after I'm gone. So, I put more effort into my work. Emily graduated from high school without any trouble. I encouraged her to pursue higher education, but she gently declined, saying it wasn't necessary. I truly felt like an inadequate father. Emily got a job as an office worker at a small company. Although it was a small company, it was part of a well-known corporate group, making it quite an achievement for a high school graduate to get a job there. People asked if I had connections, but being without any, I could only say we were lucky. Emily started living alone in an apartment close to her workplace. I asked to visit once, but she refused. I figured she didn't want her father invading her territory. Living alone in my apartment, I led a solitary life. All I could think about was how to leave as much money as possible for Emily. Then, one day, I received a text from Emily. She had found someone she loved and was going to get married. That was all it said. Shocked, I called her, and she confirmed what was in the text. I bombarded her with questions. What kind of man is he? I'd like to meet him. What about the wedding? Her answers were evasive. He's a good person, so don't worry. The wedding will be simple. You don't need to come. I insisted, but the groom's family will be there, right? They might find it strange if I'm not there. I should attend the wedding. To this, Emily started to get irritated. Anyway, Dad, don't come to the wedding. I'm begging you. If you do, I'll cut ties with you as a parent and child. Emily said that and hung up the phone. I was confused but had no choice but to accept it. Noticing my dejected state, Ashley, aware of my distress, urged me to talk about it. Unable to do so, the day of the wedding arrived. Despite being told not to attend, I still wanted to sneak a glimpse of Emily's groom, so I secretly made my way to the wedding venue. I learned of the venue due to a mix-up, receiving a call from the venue staff. As I peeked into the hall, I saw Emily, dressed in a pure white wedding gown, happily talking with a tall, gentle-looking young man. That must be the man who would become Emily's husband. He seemed sincere and trustworthy. I felt relieved. Suddenly, Emily turned and beckoned someone. A man and woman of the same age as me appeared. It was the missing Jennifer and a man I didn't recognize. Why is Jennifer here? Who is the man beside her? And why is Emily behaving as if it's normal for Jennifer to be here? Questions flooded my mind. Hiding behind a pillar, I strained my ears and heard Emily's voice. This is my mom, and this is my dad. Look, she is beautiful, isn't she? Yeah, I am surprised. Your mom, sure, but what does your dad do? My dad. He works for a major corporation, an elite just like you. A major corporation elite. I was toiling away in a small, nameless company. Then Jennifer spoke. Please take good care of our daughter. We eloped, so we never had a ceremony. We wanted Emily to wear a wedding dress. Wait, Jennifer. Who did you elope with? Me or that man? I finally began to grasp the situation. So that's how it was. Don't come to the wedding, Dad. I'll cut ties if you do. Being refused to attend my daughter Emily's wedding ceremony. Her cold words echoed repeatedly in my mind. I was betrayed by my family again. Jennifer didn't just disappear. From the words about eloping with a husband, it became clear to me that Jennifer had run away with her lover. Emily's sudden change of mood, the day she became resolute, must have been because she was in contact with Jennifer. And I was deceived all this time. Just like the ending of that Dustin Hoffman movie I saw long ago. I decided to approach Jennifer and Emily for a final goodbye. Congratulations on your wedding, Emily. I won't see you again. Jennifer and Emily froze upon seeing me. And Jennifer's affair partner. Emily, who is this? He looks like you. Emily's soon-to-be husband asked curiously. How should I put it? Kind of like the difference between a new laptop and an old laptop, you know. Inside, I retorted at her analogy, but Jennifer looked resolved. Long time no see, Jack. I hear you're still poor. Emily told me. She mocked me. Emily joined in. I've been patient, but I'll say it now. I hate being poor. I was ridiculed at school for it, so I went along with Mom's plan. Dad, or should I say, former dad, came from a wealthy family. I'm waiting for the day a huge inheritance falls into my lap. To me, you are nothing more than that. In contrast, my new dad is wealthy. I love him. He gave me lots of presents for my birthday and Christmas. His connections got me my current job. I felt nothing upon hearing this. All I thought was not to leave her a single penny of my assets. In the silence, a man yelled out, Emily, what do you think parents are for? It was Emily's would-be husband. My family was poor too, raised by a single dad. I never resented him. He loved me, and you're here saying you hate being poor and love the wealthy. That's the lowest. I won't marry you. He left after his declaration. Jennifer and Emily panicked. Jennifer ran after Emily's former fiancé. Emily came to me. Sorry, it was just a joke. Let's make up. Our family feud ends here. She continued her pleas. Hey, Dad, go calm him down, please. I ignored her. I had an important business meeting to attend. Outside the venue, a luxury car was parked, and Ashley said from inside, Is the greeting done, boss? It's almost time. I just said I understood and got into the car. Emily looked puzzled and asked me what it meant. I explained the situation. Thinking to leave as much money as possible for Emily, I reconciled with my parents after she left home. And I had to ask my parents for a favor to help me start up a company. After you left, Ashley and I started dating. Ashley used to be an illustrator as a hobby, so we set up an advertising company together. I'm the president, and she draws. It was a huge hit, especially with corporations. In just 2 years, we experienced rapid growth. Now, our annual turnover has reached $1 million. Emily's eyes widened. In a completely different tone, she said with a coquettish voice, Oh, why didn't you tell me sooner? So, I'm a president's daughter now, Daddy. I love you. Emily contorted her body. It was the first time I found my own daughter repulsive. Silently, I closed the car door and headed to the hotel where my business partner was waiting. Ashley and I sat side by side in the back seat of the car. Ashley, wasn't there a movie with Dustin Hoffman that had an ending like this? Yeah, The Graduate, where he steals the bride from the wedding and runs away. Kramer versus Kramer, and now The Graduate. Seems I have a connection with Dustin Hoffman. I said with a wry smile. Half a year later, after all these events, Jennifer and Emily wanted to meet. I refused, but they came to the company, and I couldn't escape. We talked for just 5 minutes in the president's office. 2 women, heavily made up, wearing flashy clothes and reeking of perfume, entered the president's office. It was Jennifer and Emily. They were running a small bar together. A dingy one, at that. Apparently, Jennifer's affair partner messed up at work and got fired. He's the same age as me, now unemployed. He went from an elite businessman to being unemployed. Jennifer, still legally married to me, said she wanted to start over. I also asked one thing to Jennifer. It was divorce. I'm going to officially remarry Ashley. This is the perfect opportunity. To that, Emily retorted, Dad, how could you have an affair with a woman like Ashley while Mom is still here? You womanizer. How far gone is she? When I ignored her, she said, Hey, forget about Mom. Just help me out. Isn't it just us, parent and child? Emily, rotten to the core. When I gave Ashley a look, she whispered, I'm carrying Jack's daughter in my womb. So, she'll be my little sister. Let her call me Big Sister. Emily, deeply unsettling. I called the security guards to escort them out of the president's office. Ashley safely gave birth to a daughter later. The doctors were amazed that she safely delivered despite it being a late pregnancy. I petitioned the family court to disinherit Emily. It's called disinheritance. Ashley said it wasn't necessary, but I couldn't stand Emily's rotten character. As I looked at my daughter's sleeping face, pondering if it was my fault that Emily turned out that way, I reflected. My daughter's name is Michelle. I hope she would cover my painful memories with her existence. Your wife's pregnant. I can't believe you're with an older woman. A 38-year-old woman is way past her prime. Who can tolerate their beloved wife being ridiculed by their boss like this? My wife is 38, and we're finally going to have the baby we've been waiting for a long time. As her husband, it's my duty to protect her, especially when she's facing a high-risk pregnancy. My name is Keith, and I currently work at a mid-sized advertising agency. I was raised in a low-income single-parent household. As I had to get a job to financially support my mother, I didn't get to go to high school. The company I work for only hires college graduates nowadays, but 20 years ago, it was different. It was just a small local advertising firm. That was why they hired someone like me without a high school diploma. However, the job they gave me was menial, and it was only a temporary position. The reason we were a single-parent family was that my father had passed away before I was born. He died due to an illness. My mother, a cleaner, used to clean at a hospital once a week, where she met my father, who was a patient there. Despite people advising her against marrying a man with a short life expectancy, she married him and they started their life together. My father was overjoyed when he learned my mother was pregnant. I have a feeling it'll be a boy. Let's name him Keith. My father, who had chosen the name for his unborn son, passed away 6 months later. I have only ever seen his face in photographs. But whenever I think of the story behind my name Keith, I feel my father's smiling presence. Live your life in a way that would make your father proud. My mother always said to me as a child, a mantra I still hold dear. She continued her cleaning job while raising me. However, after my birth, her health declined, and she couldn't work as hard. As my mother was often missing work, her monthly income was limited. In fact, it was just barely enough for the two of us to survive. That was why, since elementary school, I planned to start working as soon as I finished junior high school. I enjoyed drawing and was good at writing, so my homeroom teacher suggested that I work for the local advertising agency when we discussed my future. With only low levels of education, I was limited to roles like answering phones, delivering documents to clients, and running errands for the others. Since it was a temporary position, the pay was low, and there was no guarantee of continuing employment, so I devoted myself to every task. After working diligently for 3 years, I was offered a full-time position. Drawing and writing helped me to become focused on observing the work of the senior employees while I was doing menial tasks. By the time I became a full-time employee, I had a solid understanding of the routine at work, so I would go beyond my assigned tasks and duties and start proposing ideas and improvements. My boss recognized my efforts, allowing me to participate in important meetings and projects. The company, originally just a local one, gradually expanded its clientele and became recognized as a mid-sized advertising agency. Just between you and me, your contribution to our company is significant, Keith. Keep up the good work. My former boss Alex once whispered to me at an end-of-project party. Alex, a merit-based boss, always supported me regardless of my educational background. He has already retired, but I'll forever be grateful to him. I met my wife, Emily, when I was 20. After work, I would often stop by the supermarket near the office to do my grocery shopping. Emily, a cashier there, chased after me one day as I was leaving, having finished my shopping. "I'm sorry, I forgot that the stuff you bought was on special." She returned the overcharged amount, a mere 30 cents, which she had run after me to give back. How honest she was. That was my initial impression. Since then, we started chatting casually and eventually began dating. I found that my first impression of her was actually correct. Thinking I'd regret it for the rest of my life if I let her go, I confessed my feelings to her. Emily was 35 years old, 15 years older than me, and divorced. She married someone who came from a wealthy local family after he fell in love with her, but was unilaterally divorced because she was unable to conceive. "So, I might not be able to have children. Is that okay with you?" Emily asked with a look of guilt, and I told her. Of course, we get married. And to our delight, 3 years into our marriage, we discovered she was pregnant. Emily and I, who had given up hope of having children, were overjoyed and embraced each other. I think the reason Emily couldn't get pregnant in her first marriage was probably due to her ex-husband. Since you're 38, it's considered a high-risk pregnancy. Your husband's support is crucial, so please ensure he's there for you, the obstetrician advised. Hearing this, I asked Emily to reduce her work hours at the supermarket. I was also actively trying to help her with the heavy lifting and daily household chores. I truly understood the feelings my late father must have had when he named his unborn child. I wished he could have lived a little longer to see the child that was about to be born. Emily's belly gradually grew, as did my happiness. However, not everything was smooth sailing. The new boss, Charles, was hard on me for some reason. "Hey Keith, there's trash in the hallway. Clean that up now." "What do you mean?" Confused, I asked for clarification, only to be met with a scornful laugh from Charles. "You were just a temp doing menial tasks, right? Don't forget that and clean up." Not only me but also my colleagues were shocked to hear that. However, we all knew the kind of backlash we'd face if we defied Charles. So, my colleagues turned a blind eye. Despite being busy with work, I cleaned the hallway. A month after Charles joined, we had a team-building event at a pub. After having some beer, Charles began bragging. "My wife's in her late 30s, and she's lost all her charm. At my favorite bar, I just slip a $100 note to a young woman, and off to a motel." "Wow, you're having an affair with someone in her 20s. I wish I could attract a young woman like you do, Charles." When the colleagues flattered him, Charles got even more carried away and said to me, "Speaking of which, Keith, your wife is 15 years older than you, isn't she? Must be boring to be with an old lady in her late 30s. I can introduce you to a young girl if you want." What a jerk. That was what I thought to myself, but I just laughed it off. Charles, with his graduate degree, looked down on me, a middle school graduate, as if I was nothing. My previous boss, who had already retired, recognized my contributions, but Charles was different. Moreover, he believed younger women were more desirable. It was bad enough to demean his own wife, but I couldn't stand him insulting my beloved wife. One morning, during an important meeting, Emily called me. "I'm feeling a bit unwell. It's hard to go to the hospital alone. Can you come with me?" That's not good. I'll be right there, I replied. I explained the situation to Charles and asked if I could leave work early. Can't your wife go to the hospital by herself? Well, she's pregnant, so I'd rather accompany her. When I mentioned Emily was pregnant, his eyes widened and then he burst out laughing. Are you trying to say a 38-year-old woman getting pregnant? If you want to ditch work, at least come up with a better lie. It's true, she's really pregnant, I insisted. Charles gaped at me, then sneered. Your wife's pregnant. I can't believe you're actually with an older woman. A 38-year-old woman is way past her prime. That was when I lost it. Are you for real? How can you be so rude? This child means everything to my wife. She needs my support, especially now. Ignoring Charles's attempts to stop me, I rushed out of the office and headed home. I immediately called a taxi and took her to the hospital. Fortunately, her condition soon stabilized and the baby was unharmed. The next day, as soon as I arrived at work, Charles started ordering me around. Keith, go visit our key customers now. Don't come back until you've secured 10 new contracts. Wait, please. There's an important project meeting today. You, a middle school graduate, don't need to be in meetings. You're just a menial worker. It was clear Charles was holding a grudge for my defiance yesterday. Although I was supposed to lead the meeting, I had no choice but to entrust it to a colleague and go on customer visits. Luckily, our clients trusted me, and as soon as I explained the situation, they readily signed new contracts. I managed to secure 10 contracts before noon and returned to the office in time to attend a project meeting. But Charles wasn't the kind to back down easily. Even as I was explaining the project's plan, he interrupted, saying, I'm thirsty. Hey, errand boy, I want some orange juice. After I went out to get orange juice for him and returned, he demanded, didn't I say I wanted coffee? Go and exchange it. His unreasonable requests and demands ruined the meeting for the day. Since I couldn't conduct the project meeting properly, I got reprimanded by the head office and went through a tough time. I was disheartened by the thought of facing this situation again tomorrow. I couldn't bring myself to share any of this with Emily, who was preparing for a high-risk pregnancy. And I didn't want to worry her, which could potentially affect her health. But as Charles's unreasonable bullying continued, Emily noticed something was wrong. You're not looking well. What's wrong? You don't have to do the housework if you're tired. Saying this, Emily, with her big belly, started doing the dishes. Realizing this wasn't right, I decided to tell her about the terrible treatment I was receiving from Charles. Is there something wrong with a 38-year-old woman being pregnant? Was your boss joking around? What's wrong with giving birth at an advanced age? Insulted, Emily was extremely angry. It seemed she felt the need to teach Charles a lesson, not just for herself but for all the women around the world preparing for childbirth at advanced maternal age. What's the name of your boss? She asked. I think his full name is Charles Anderson, I replied. Oh. Upon hearing Charles's name, Emily crossed her arms and nodded thoughtfully. Then, she came up with a plan and shared it with me. I was skeptical at first, but I knew following her plan was the only way to calm her anger. The following Sunday, there was a neighborhood cleanup event. According to the neighborhood association rules, all residents must participate in cleaning up. We were supposed to gather trash from public spaces around our homes and then take it to the park. Concerned about the baby in her belly, I helped Emily pick up the garbage and took it to the park. There, we unexpectedly ran into Charles and his wife. As it turned out, Charles and I lived in the same neighborhood. Emily, who actively participated in neighborhood meetings, knew Charles's wife. I'm Emily. Nice to meet you. Emily greeted Charles, her tone overly sweet. Charles, upon seeing Emily's big belly, looked very uncomfortable. Charles always says terrible things like women over 30 aren't really women anymore, Charles's wife said. "Oh, no, that was just a joke." Charles, seemingly intimidated by his wife, frantically tried to dismiss his usual remarks in a panic. This happened while all the participants were having coffee after the neighborhood cleanup event. Suddenly, Emily started speaking in a loud voice, making sure everyone could hear her. "There's something I want to tell you. My husband asked his boss if he could leave work early to take me to the hospital." Guess what his boss said? As Emily spoke, Charles's wife glared at him. He said, "I can't believe a 38-year-old woman still can get pregnant. They are just old hags, not women." This revelation sparked outrage among the women of the neighborhood. It appeared that Emily had already confided everything to Charles's wife, who then started speaking out loud. "Charles often says that women in their 30s shouldn't even be called women." "Oh, no, that's not what I meant." As Charles tried to hastily make excuses, his wife presented a screenshot of Charles's text messages with other women that she had secretly kept on her phone. "I know everything, Charles. You've been looking down on me just because I'm in my 30s and cheating with younger women," she accused. "I'm sorry," Charles muttered. "I thought I could put up with it, but I can't stand the fact that you belittled women who were giving birth at an older age." With a fierce look, Emily grabbed Charles's arm and dragged him out of the park. While everyone from the neighborhood association stood there in shock, my wife Emily winked at me. It felt like the thorn had been removed from my heart, and I instinctively hugged Emily. Since then, Charles hasn't shown up at the office. Apparently, his wife filed for divorce, claiming a significant amount of money for a property settlement. His repeated mistreatment of his subordinates had all come to light, resulting in his instant dismissal. Furthermore, President Johnson, recognizing my past achievements, promoted me to the head of the department. The first thing I did was create a more comfortable workplace in our department. No more looking down on women because of their age. Encouraging male employees to take paternity leave. Because of these reforms, the relationships among the staff improved, and our work performance significantly increased. Emily safely delivered a baby boy, fulfilling her dream of becoming a mother. Now, as the head of the department, I lead by example by taking paternity leave and devoting myself to child rearing. We named our son after my late father. "Dad, your grandson is born." Reporting to my Father in heaven, Emily and I vowed to protect our child at all costs. Watching our son grow every day, Emily and I feel truly blessed. Well, Jennifer, as beautiful as ever, are you here for a business negotiation with your subordinate today? As we were walking down the hallway of our client's office, an elite manager named Alex approached us. "Thank you for your support. That's right. It seems the only job he can do is carrying bags. Haha." My boss, to whom I replied, is named Jennifer. She's 3 years older and has been teaching me everything about the job since I joined the company. My name is Chris. After graduating from college, I joined a medical device manufacturing company and have been in sales for 2 years. Today, we came to negotiate with a client who is a wholesaler of medical devices, but we always seem to run into Alex. What a pathetic man. Whipped by a woman. You lack spirit, man. Come on. He said this as he passed by, patting me on the back. As I was caught off guard and choking, Jennifer said, "Hey, that kind of attitude is not acceptable." Jennifer approached Alex with a firm attitude. Pathetic. You're too lenient." He said this and walked away. "Chris, are you okay? That guy really dicks me official. I want to get back at him someday, but he seems pretty competent. Maybe that's why he acts that way, but it's still unacceptable." Jennifer said this, showing her concern for me. "I'm fine. I'll work hard to become competent and prove him wrong." I was serious about this. Thanks to Jennifer's smooth talking, our meeting went well, and we got the client's approval for the contract, all the way up to the manager's decision. We took the contract to Alex and explained it to him, but he tore it up, crumpled it, and said, "This is too expensive, I can't sign this." Cut it by 15% and then threw it in the trash. Stunned, we were about to leave when he said, "How long do you plan to stand there? Go back and figure out how to reduce it by 15% or I'll buy from someone else." Jennifer was clenching her fists in anger. "Let's go back, Jennifer. I'll prepare the documents." Saying this, we got up, apologized to Alex, and decided to leave. And as we were walking down the hallway, suddenly, "Anyone, call an ambulance, please." We looked at each other and ran towards the voice. Opening the door, we found Alex lying face down, seemingly unconscious. "Jennifer, please call an ambulance. I'll administer first aid." As I said this, Jennifer tried to call 911 but was too flustered to dial correctly. "What should I do, Chris? I can't press the buttons properly." With a trembling voice, she said, and I replied, "I'll count for you. Just calm down. 911. She managed to dial 911 following my instructions. Meanwhile, I called out to Alex, but there was no response. I checked his wrist for a pulse but couldn't feel any. Turning Alex onto his back, I checked for breathing, but he wasn't breathing. I started CPR and rescue breathing, but Alex still didn't revive, so I shouted, "Someone, bring a defibrillator." A stunned employee snapped out of it and went to get the defibrillator. Another employee brought it quickly and handed it to me. I prepared it and said, "I'm using the defibrillator. Please step back." When I used it, Alex's body jerked. I put my ear to his chest to check if his heart had started, and I could hear it beating. Jennifer, now a bit calmer, was informing the fire department of the client's company name and address. "What should we do about Alex's condition?" they're asking. Hearing this, I took the phone and explained Alex's situation. Jennifer seemed surprised by my quick response to the patient. After confirming that Alex's pulse had stabilized, I said, "For now, he seems to be okay. If you know whether Alex has any chronic conditions or regularly takes any medication, please let us know." When I asked his subordinate, they said Alex was on medication for high blood pressure. Seeing how I handled the situation with ease, Jennifer approached me and asked, "Who are you? You seem experienced with life-saving and using a defibrillator." Before she could finish, the paramedics arrived, so I decided to explain the situation to them and left. Jennifer seemed upset that I didn't answer her question and was distant in the car on the way back, not responding to any of my attempts to start a conversation. Having no choice, I decided to share my story with Jennifer. "Jennifer, can I tell you about myself? Actually, I graduated from medical school before joining our company. My family has a long line of doctors, and my father runs his own practice in our hometown. He's an orthopedic surgeon, and my mother is a dermatologist. My brother and sister are also doctors, working in a university hospital." Really? Does such a family actually exist? I wish it didn't. I topped my class in medical school but failed the medical licensing exam. I took the surgical exam but failed. My father was furious, calling me a disgrace and saying I had brought shame to the family. My mother tried to defend me, but it got too uncomfortable at home, so I left. I gave up on becoming a doctor. I never really wanted to be one anyway. That's quite a story, but if you wanted to avoid medicine entirely, why choose to work at our company, a medical device manufacturer? I was cornered by her question and struggled to respond, but she followed up, saying, "If you still want to be a doctor, why not give it another shot? You don't have to practice medicine just because you have a license. You could get your license and still work here." She said this to reassure me. "Jennifer, you're kind. Thank you, but it's not so easy to pass the medical exam while working. I've accepted this as my fate." I tried to sound calm, but what Jennifer said stuck with me, and I started to consider retaking the medical exam. Back at the company, everyone already knew about Alex's collapse and that I had resuscitated him. I heard that the president of the client company had called to thank me occasionally. I was informed that Alex needed a detailed examination but was currently stable. I lied to my colleagues, saying I knew how to use a defibrillator because my family were doctors, and asked Jennifer to keep my medical school background a secret. I got careless, and someone from HR ended up revealing my educational background, so it eventually got out. Some colleagues curiously asked me why I joined this company, but I couldn't bring myself to tell them what I had told Jennifer, so I just laughed it off. For a while, I became a topic of conversation at work, but after a month, nobody mentioned it anymore. Just when I thought I could finally concentrate on my work, I received a call from the client company. Surprisingly, it was Alex. "Hello, is this Chris? Thank you for saving my life the other day. Thanks to your quick decision, I can come back to work safely. I'd like to visit you soon to express my gratitude in person. When would be a good time?" Startled, I said, "Oh, you don't need to do that. Let me check with my supervisor." "I need to speak with you, not your supervisor. Is there a problem with me visiting?" "No, not at all. Please hold for a moment." I put the phone on hold and told my manager, Mike, that Alex wanted to visit to thank me. "Really? That's great. Let's take him on a factory tour and show our products. Chris, make sure to guide him when he visits." He said this, putting more pressure on me. Resigned, I picked up the phone again and said, "Thank you for waiting. We look forward to welcoming you to our office. Please let us know a date and time that works for you." "Thank you. I wouldn't want to intrude suddenly, so how about in a week? I'm looking forward to meeting you," he said and ended the call. I sighed deeply and went to Mike for instructions on the visit. "I'm leaving it up to you. You're Alex's lifesaver, so even if there are minor mistakes, he'll probably overlook them. Just memorize our product catalog. That should be easy for a med school grad." He ended with a sarcastic remark, so I decided not to say anything more to him. From then on, I spent my days preparing explanatory materials and learning about our products and catalogs at the showroom. As I familiarized myself with our products, I noticed differences from the medical instruments I used in med school. Understanding both the good and bad aspects, I suggested improvements to the product development team, and they said, "Thank you for the great suggestions. Could you also look at our other products? Your opinion is valuable since we don't get much feedback from doctors. If you have any cost-saving ideas, let us know." I never expected Alex's visit to lead to all this, but I found it interesting and continued to propose improvements to the development team. After finishing the materials for the product presentation and preparing the tour route, ensuring everything was in order for the day, it finally arrived. On the day, President Johnson and the executives were waiting at the company entrance for Alex's visit. As I met each executive, they said, "Chris, we're counting on you today. Make sure to promote our products well." Feeling the pressure, I saw the car carrying Alex pull up to the entrance. The driver opened the rear door, and Alex, using a cane, stepped out. "Thank you all for welcoming me. Is Chris here? He saved my life, allowing me to return to work safely. I have some after effects, but thank you very much." He said this. As President Johnson and the executives introduced themselves one by one, I thought standing for a long time might be hard for Alex, so I said, "Alex, it's been a while. Please, let me take you to the reception room." "Chris, you're thoughtful. Thank you." Alex smiled and gently patted my back, encouraging me to head with him to the reception room. Leading the way, Alex and I walked ahead while President Johnson and the executives followed. Then, Alex whispered with a laugh, "Don't your company's big shots know how to host guests?" Hearing that, I couldn't help but burst out laughing and simply replied, "I apologize." Since Alex was using a cane, I thought it would be best to cancel the factory tour and conveyed this to President Johnson, who agreed. In the reception room, a cheerful Alex, almost unrecognizable from before, apologized in front of President Johnson for tearing up the contract on the day he collapsed. I was feeling extremely unwell and irritable that day, and I acted inappropriately. I apologize for my behavior. However, as much as I respect a company that employs my lifesaver, I cannot approve the contract at that price due to my position. I cannot mix personal matters with business. Please, let's work towards a mutually agreeable contract," he said. I explained to Alex that I had conveyed the improvement ideas I thought of while preparing the product presentation to the development team, and that cost reductions were expected. "Then, let's have a presentation when the product is ready," Alex said before leaving. As his car disappeared from view, President Johnson, the executives, and I all let out sighs of relief. After explaining my discussion with the development team to President Johnson, I was granted the afternoon off as a reward. Back at my apartment, I couldn't stop thinking about Alex using a cane. I felt responsible, wondering if my first aid had caused his condition. Unable to ask Alex directly, I spent the day restless. The next morning, still preoccupied, I decided to research potential after effects based on Alex's symptoms and medication. Immersed in medical books, I rediscovered the passion I had when I aimed to be a doctor. Though I thought I didn't want to be a doctor, I realized my true feelings at that moment. The desire to save lives as a doctor grew stronger, and even during work, I fought about it until Jennifer invited me to dinner. "You did a great job handling Alex's visit. Let's have a small celebration. How about going out for drinks this Friday night?" she suggested. I was relieved to realize that my concerns hadn't been as obvious as I thought. Come to think of it, it's been a while since I went out for drinks with Jennifer. I remember getting scolded a lot about work in the past. This time, it seems there won't be any reprimanding, so it looks like I'll finally enjoy some good drinks. With that thought, I looked forward to Friday. Finally, Friday came, and after work, I headed to the bar where Jennifer was already waiting. "Oops, sorry, did I keep you waiting?" As I hurriedly took my seat, Jennifer said, "I arrived just about 5 minutes ago, so I haven't been waiting. I'm quite thirsty. Shall we order some drinks first?" We ordered beers and talked about the day Alex collapsed. That time was really shocking. I was so angry at how Alex was treating you before he collapsed. I wanted to knock some sense into him. And then he just fell over. It made me feel somewhat responsible. It's strange. In such moments, even calling an ambulance properly seems impossible. I felt so helpless. Jennifer looked a bit downcast as she said this. "It's unnerving, isn't it? Despite his age, Alex maintained his physique and seemed to take good care of his health. It didn't appear like he had any chronic illnesses. To be honest, I've always found Alex a bit difficult, but during his last visit, he was surprisingly cheerful. Seeing him walk with a cane made me feel sorry for him. I've been wondering if my emergency treatment caused his condition." As I shared my concerns, Jennifer encouraged me. "What are you talking about? To be able to do what you did in that situation is incredible. Just because you graduated from medical school doesn't mean you're a doctor, so you don't need to feel that responsible. You did really well despite how badly he treated you." Jennifer continued, "Hey, Chris, this might be none of my business, but have you thought about pursuing a career as a doctor again? Becoming a doctor is a calling. Not everyone can save lives like you did. Forget about what your parents think. It's irrelevant." As Jennifer looked at me earnestly, I decided to be honest about my feelings. "Actually, I've been researching why Alex started using a cane. I'm worried that my first aid was inadequate. While researching, I realized that I do want to become a doctor. I'm just wondering if my curiosity about Alex's cane is the only reason." After listening to my story, Jennifer grinned and said, "I knew it," with a knowing smile. "Recently, you've been deep in thought a lot and sighing heavily. I was wondering what was going on. And it turns out you were worrying about all this, huh?" She said this with a chuckle. "Was it that obvious? I tried to act normal around you. Was this invitation a day specifically for this reason?" Jennifer laughed. "Spot on. I knew something was bothering you. You're quite transparent, you know. I even saw you researching medical conditions on your computer during lunch. Is there a reason you're hesitating? I explained, when I was a student, I had time to prepare for the medical exams, but now, working full-time, I have less time to study. I haven't saved enough to take a year off for study, and I don't want to quit a job I like. Jennifer responded, "It's fine if you won't regret it in a few years, but you can't live in doubt forever. If you fail again, then you can give up for good. So why not try and cut through the uncertainty? Now might be an easier time to pass." I knew Jennifer was right, but studying while working seemed daunting. When I explained this to Jennifer, she offered, "If you're serious about becoming a doctor, why don't you come live with me? I'm at work on weekdays. I can cook dinner, and I have enough savings to support you for about a year. I can lend you money, too. Living alone, you'd have to cook, which is a waste of precious time. If you work hard, even if you don't succeed, you'll be able to move on without regrets." I was stunned by her unexpected offer and didn't know what to say. But her sincere concern for me was heartwarming. "Thank you, Jennifer. I appreciate your serious consideration of my situation. I'll think about it over the weekend. Of course, I'm leaning towards taking the exam. I need to assess my current knowledge, figure out how to make time for study, and consider how to balance it with work." Smart people do that, don't they? Think carefully and decide. I'm not that smart, so I just go for it. Instead of wasting time overthinking, why not dedicate that time to studying? If there's a will, there's a way. Her words resonated with me, and she added, "I don't like talking about it, but I've given up on many things in life. That's what I don't want others to give up. Chris, you still have a chance. If you want to do it, you should. If you give it your all and it doesn't work out, then you can let go. It seems like a part of you still believes you can do it." Encouraged by Jennifer's support, I resolved, I'll try. I'll study while working for a month, and if it doesn't work, I'll look for other ways. I might inconvenience you at work, but I have to do this. Interrupting me midway through my explanation, Jennifer jokingly said, "You're always like that, aren't you? What's new about it? I'll support you in your work and meals, so start preparing for the medical exam. First things first, I'm going to your apartment now. I need to know where it is to bring you dinner." Again, she surprised me with something unexpected. "No, that's all right for dinner. There's a convenience store and a diner nearby. If you want, you can bring dinner to the office." I try my best to politely decline her offer to come to my apartment. Is it such a hassle to have me come over? I'm quite good at cooking and doing household chores, you know. But if it's going to be a distraction from your studies, then I won't come. Just know that if you're serious about this, I'm willing to help that much. Knowing there's someone to support you can be a big motivation. Seeing Jennifer looking a bit sad, as if disappointed that I wasn't relying on her, I quickly reassured her, "Please, don't be down. I'm just really surprised and grateful to meet someone who thinks so deeply about helping me. It's truly a blessing to have someone like you encouraging me. There's a limit to how much one can push themselves alone. But knowing that you care so much makes me want to work even harder. I will definitely turn to you when I need help. Jennifer, I can't thank you enough." That's what I told Jennifer, expressing my sincere appreciation. "Can I have your apartment address then?" Jennifer asked, holding out a notebook and pen. After writing my address in Jennifer's notebook, she remarked, "Oh, you live quite close to me. It's surprising that we've never crossed paths during commute hours." Learning where Jennifer lived, I realized it was only about a 15-minute bike ride from my place. "I live near a bus stop and usually commute by bus," I explained. "You would take the train from your place, right? Maybe that's why our paths never crossed. But there's a supermarket located halfway between our places, so we might have bumped into each other while shopping." Pointing out the supermarket on her phone's map, she said, "I go there often for groceries since I cook myself. The freshness and prices are unbeatable. I go there for the 30% off deli items." After chatting about local spots, we decided to head home. Since we were going in the same direction, we shared a taxi, and Jennifer got off first at her place. In the taxi, Jennifer reminded me to start studying from the next day. When I returned to my apartment, I started tidying up to create an environment conducive to studying and rearranged the room's layout. After preparing for bed, I planned to start studying as soon as I woke up the next day. With these thoughts in mind, I drifted off to sleep. I was awakened by the doorbell in the morning. Rubbing my sleepy eyes, I checked the time. It was just past 9 a.m. Thinking it might be the neighbor's doorbell, it rang again. I hurried to the door and opened it to find Jennifer standing there with a packed lunch. Inviting her in, she teased, "Were you still sleeping? Got motivation, Chris? Oh, your place is nicely tidied up. I cleaned up and rearranged last night to prepare for studying. Would you like some coffee? I can make tea too." "No need, I'll do it. I've brought breakfast too, so let's eat together. They say a good breakfast improves brain function, but you probably know that better." As Jennifer boiled water, she opened the meal box. The beautifully arranged meal inside was a clear indication of her culinary skills, just as she had mentioned. After we finished our breakfast together, Jennifer began to clean up the dishes used for the meal. I expressed my gratitude to Jennifer and informed her that I was going to start studying. Jennifer then said, "I don't want to disturb you, so I'll leave soon. I'll come back for the lunchbox later." "If you don't have any plans for the rest of the day, Jennifer, you're welcome to stay here. I can't offer much in terms of hospitality though." Responding to my offer, Jennifer happily said, "Really? That's great. It's too hot to go back and forth outside. I'll just sit quietly and read a book. Do you have any that I could read?" I recommended a book and handed it to her. Surprised, she said, "Oh, I was about to buy this book. I like this author. Do you have any more books by them?" "Yes, I have more. I've been a fan since the author debuted. Feel free to choose any from here," I said, pointing to my bookshelf, before sitting down at my desk to study. Jennifer sat on the sofa reading, but soon she seemed to have fallen asleep. I guessed she must have woken up early to prepare the lunch, and I continued studying, grateful for her support. As lunchtime passed and I started feeling hungry, Jennifer suddenly woke up. "Oh no, I fell asleep. It's past lunchtime. I'll get everything ready. Just wait a moment," she said, starting to prepare lunch. "I really appreciate you making lunch so early. I was able to concentrate on my studies because of your help. Thank you." "Don't mention it. Take a break. It will be ready soon," she replied, finishing up the lunch preparation, and we ate together. "Are you okay with staying here for the afternoon as well?" In response to her question, I said, "I'm completely fine with it. How about we go to my favorite diner for dinner?" This was the first time I had ever invited Jennifer out for a meal. "Yes, I was actually curious about it. Let's go, but I'll leave the timing to you. Keep up the good work until then." I managed to focus on my studies throughout the afternoon, and at 3 p.m., Jennifer prepared coffee and sweets, allowing for a well-timed break that helped maintain my concentration and efficiency. I remembered how, during my student days, I used to push myself hard and study desperately, but often found that the information didn't stick, leaving me feeling anxious. Feeling more optimistic with my current approach, I thought I could manage it this time. However, knowing I had just started, I resolved not to let my guard down. For dinner, we went to my favorite diner. While eating, I expressed my gratitude to Jennifer. "Thank you for everything today. Thanks to you, I was able to study efficiently. It feels like I'm making more progress than during my student years." "Oh, I'm glad. I just ended up sleeping when I came over. Sorry about that. I won't come tomorrow to avoid disturbing you, so you can focus on your studies." Feeling grateful for her support, I said, "Your visit today was actually quite pleasant, and we discovered we have similar tastes in books. I didn't feel uncomfortable even in silence. If you're okay with it, please feel free to visit anytime. Cooking meals might be a hassle for you, so you can cook at my place if you like. I'll even cover the food expenses." "Are you asking me out?" Startled by her comment, I quickly responded, "No, that's not what I meant." "Well, maybe. but now's not the time to think about that." I felt flustered by her playful remark. Jennifer laughed it off. "Don't worry about it. If it's not a bother, that's fine with me," she answered with a light-hearted tone, acknowledging my flustered response. After that conversation, we parted ways at the diner, and I watched her leave before heading back to my apartment. I studied until I fell asleep, and before I knew it, the night had turned to morning. Although Jennifer didn't come over on Sunday, during the weekdays, she supported me by bringing packed lunches. I couldn't study during the day due to work, but Jennifer took over all my overtime, allowing me to focus on studying when I got home. This routine continued for 2 months, and I began to adapt to this new rhythm, feeling my studies progress. Trying some past exam papers, I scored close to the passing mark. I consistently achieved stable scores even on other past exam questions. Although these scores didn't match my student days, I felt a sense of joy and accomplishment. The fact that I could achieve steady scores in a different environment from the relentless struggle of my student years was a significant achievement. I shared this progress and my happiness with Jennifer. "I'm doing better now than in my student days, though the scores are a bit lower, but I think I can make it through the medical exam in another half year," I told her. Jennifer responded, "That's great to hear. If I'm helping, then that's good." I reminisced about the first time you brought lunch to my apartment and how you fell asleep from exhaustion. When I feel overwhelmed by studying, I remember her sleeping, and it motivates me. It's good to have someone to work hard for. That's what I conveyed to her. From then on, she came over once a week to cook and support me. Whenever I felt like giving up, recalling her dedication helped me push through. 2 weeks before the exam, I decided to use all my remaining leave for the final push. By then, my intention to take the medical exam had become known at work, and even my boss, Mike, was understanding. Though Jennifer didn't take leave, she supported me by cooking dinner on weekdays and staying over on weekend. Finally, I passed the medical exam. Without hesitation, I called Jennifer to share the news. She was tearful on the phone, so after expressing my gratitude, I invited her out for dinner. The next day, the product development team informed us that the improved product was ready. Jennifer and I prepared the materials and set off to present them to Alex. When we visited the client, we were led directly to Alex. Together with Jennifer, I explained the product improvements and the cost reductions, asking for feedback. The person in charge agreed to the contract, and Alex also approved it, allowing us to finalize the deal. "Please convey my appreciation for the hard work and development," said Alex. "Maybe it's because of Chris's advice. I noticed he seems different since the last time we met, more confident. Did something happen?" Jennifer and I exchanged glances, and she encouraged me. "Chris, why don't you tell him?" I decided to share the story from when Alex collapsed. I talked about my decision to pursue medicine again, my successful medical exam, and how Jennifer had been a dedicated supporter throughout the journey. Hearing this, Alex said, "I see. I didn't mean to cause you worry. The cane was due to a back injury, unrelated to that incident. The emergency crew told me your first aid was perfect. Without you, I might not be alive. You should be confident in yourself." I felt a weight lift off my shoulders upon hearing this. "You two looked like a perfect couple from the start. Finally got together, huh?" Alex teased us. "So, what's your plan for the future? Are you going to leave the company and become a doctor?" Faced with this question, I decided to discuss my future plans, even though I hadn't yet spoken to Jennifer about them. "I've decided to become a doctor. I have the desire to help sick people, and it's also a way to repay Jennifer for her support." Jennifer nodded in agreement. "That's good to hear. Jennifer will miss you at the company though." Jennifer quickly replied, "Mind your own business. It's his life, and I support whatever he decides. Chris, become a great doctor and fix Alex's attitude." Suddenly, the staff member standing next to Alex burst into laughter. Caught up in the moment, We all joined in, sharing a lighthearted laugh together. After receiving the contract, we left the client's office to head back to our company. In the car, I spoke with Jennifer. "I'm sorry I decided to become a doctor without telling you first. I had planned to discuss it with you sooner." "It's okay. It's your decision, and as long as you don't regret it, that's all that matters to me." "Thank you, but there's one more thing I need to say, or I might regret it. Would you consider dating with me? With the marriage and spending our lives together in mind?" Jennifer seemed utterly surprised, probably not having anticipated this at all. Jennifer, clearly surprised, eventually said, "Yes, I will. Guess I should start planning my resignation. Wonder who will do the sales if we both leave." 3 years have passed since we got married, and my wife is still working hard in sales. Every day, I face my patients with gratitude, remembering how Alex's collapse became the catalyst for where I am now.